Hello and welcome to the latest installment in our Helix Education webinar series, COVID-19, the Roadmap to Fall 2020. Today we're talking about institutional online readiness and specifically creating institutional buy-in for the new future of higher education. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We've got a great group of panelists with us today to dive into this topic. Before we get into that, just a few housekeeping items. This is the 13th webinar in this series. I can't believe we've made it this far. So if you joined us for our other webinars, welcome back. If this is your first time, we're certainly glad to have you. Just a couple things to keep in mind as we get into. We are recording today's proceedings, and so we will be posting this on our Helix Education YouTube channel after the fact. And so just be aware of that. We also have a live transcript service through Otter AI, where you can follow along with a live transcript of today's webinar. We've put the link there in the chat for anybody who is interested in using that service. We will have, we welcome your questions today. There's a Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and so you can click that at any time during today's webinar and share with us what you're thinking and what questions you may have to contribute to our discussion today. And so, like I said, this has been a long journey. We started this journey all the way, well, really, some of us started all the way back in March when COVID-19 hit. And then in earnest, we've been starting these webinars and progressing all throughout the summer, focused on these 4 pillars of transitioning to quality online education. We'll dive more into those at the end of our discussion today. And like I said, today we're focused on the pillar as it relates to institutional online readiness. And we've got 4 fabulous panelists today, each with many perspectives and a lot of experience and expertise related to this discussion today. So first, we're going to introduce Trish Bugajski. She is the Dean of the College of Adult and Distance Education at the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne, Indiana. 15 years at USF in a variety of roles. Prior to her current role as the Dean, she's also been Director of General Education at USF. She's been she's headed up USF's Student Academic Support Services team. Highly experienced in loads of different categories: e-learning, recruiting, admissions. Associate Vice President of Academic Affairs is another title that she holds. And in addition to all this great stuff, she's been an adjunct instructor, so she can speak to it from that side of the fence. And she's also a mom. Her daughter currently attends Loyola Chicago, is a rising sophomore there. And so Trish is living this transition along with her daughter that a lot of students and parents are facing themselves right now. So Trish, thank you for joining us, and we're excited to hear more from you. Also joining us today is Mary Johnson from Brenau University. Mary is Brenau's Director of Instructional Design and Online Teaching and Learning. She's been a part of the Brenau family since 2009. Not only has she been an instructor and a staff member, she's a student. That's where she earned her MBA, and her bachelor's degree was from Brenau University. And so that background in IT, business, instructional design, and also some nonprofit background. Before her time at Brenau, she was involved in local government as well. And so that combined experience was crucial for Brenau as they transitioned to fully online learning with about a week's notice back when COVID-19 first kind of blew up in March. She also holds multiple certifications from the Online Learning Consortium. And so in addition to all this, Mary knows what it's like to be an online learner. She earned her degrees through online classes as well. And so that helps inform her firsthand perspective and gives her a chance to practice what she preaches, having been on that side of the fence as well. So Mary, happy to have you. And then we've got 2 of our fabulous folks from Helix Education here. Our most frequent webinar presenter in this series, Cherron, Ed.D, our Vice President and Chief Academic Officer at Helix Education. And so 3 decades of higher ed experience in a variety of roles, and especially for this conversation today, a couple of roles that I want to point out. Heavily involved with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges as an accreditation peer reviewer. And so Cherron is going to be able to bring this perspective of, gaining institutional buy-in and the role that accreditation can help play and shape that discussion, as well as prior to her time at Helix Education, Dean of Undergraduate Programs at Golden Gate University. And so being able to bring that academic expertise as well is something that's going to be really valuable for our discussion today. So Cherron is always welcome. And then last, but certainly not least, is Helix Education's own Miranda Benson, Vice President of Enrollment Management. 14 total exciting years, very exciting years of serving non-traditional adult students, helping them to achieve quality outcomes online. 5 of those years with Helix, and then prior to Helix has also worked on the institutional side of things. And so beyond the professional experience with Helix, Miranda also knows what it's like to be on that institutional side and helping address students' questions and getting this kind of buy-in. And so Miranda, happy to have you here as well. And so I'm going to turn the time over next to our moderator today, Kari Kova, our Chief Operations Officer here at Helix Education. And again, just like all the other women on our panel today, lots of perspective, lots of expertise, both on the professional and the personal side as it relates to this discussion today. Kari is in education life for 2+ decades in multiple roles, serving students, helping to lead high performance teams. And above all, that perspective, that view of the world is saying, hey, what if we try this? What if we try that? And so a great choice to moderate our discussion today. And she's also a parent of college students as well. And so she can bring that added perspective to the conversation today. And so with all of that, Kari, I'm going to turn the time over to you to get us started on this panel discussion today. So Kari, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Sparky. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Fab Four who are joining us today. I'm excited to have you all with us. So what we'll do, and hopefully what we'll be able to accomplish today, is we're going to share a little bit of we'll give you some research and reference some research studies and kind of talk through the dynamic that is the world around us and how might we think about creating buy-in. What are some things that we've experienced kind of together that might help improve the student experience, improve the faculty experience, their engagement, and so on and so forth. And so this is really what we're hoping to do: increase awareness around kind of student and faculty and their involvement, make sure that we share and kind of maybe identify some opportunities that we can take advantage of and use to kind of support students to make sure that we're really thinking about this fall and all of the impacts of COVID in a meaningful way to help improve kind of strategies around teaching, learning, and the services that we're offering, not only our students, but also our faculty as well, and our institutional kind of members. And then finally, we're going to explore ways to ensure that student engagement can be achieved with the level of kind of energy and passion that I think all of us really hold dear. And so this is really what we're hoping to accomplish. I am fortunate, like I said, to have these 4 fabulous ladies joining me. And my hope is for those that are in attendance, that you'll be able to kind of, 1, hear some things that maybe resonate with what you're experiencing in the world around you. 2, maybe take away a few things that you can take back to your institution and or to your individual role and hopefully improve the lives of your students, your faculty, and other members of your community. So with that, let's kind of do a quick, high-level look at what's happening around us. I think we all agree and understand that the world has changed significantly since COVID-19 kind of, hit the scenes for us. And so one of the things that we continually are watching, and I'm sure many of you are as well, is the Chronicle is kind of helping us to understand what's happening in the world around us and how are institutions thinking about this fall and how they're planning to navigate. One of the things that I think is important to note, and you'll see here, is that 49% of us are really institutions across the country are planning for in-person. And that's awesome and that's exciting. But one of the things that I think is really important to remember is that just 3 weeks ago, that number was sitting at 59%. So the reality is this: COVID is not under, right? We haven't figured it out. We still have many states, one of which I'm in, Utah, and where Miranda is in Arizona, we are booming like crazy. And so there's a lot of interesting dynamics that are going on. And because of that, many of us are having to think through a variety of contingency plans. So yes, we want our students on campus in the fall, but we also recognize and appreciate that we're having to have alternative models, whether that be hybrid and or 100% online. The other thing that I still think is incredibly relevant is Phil obviously published this later it was in the spring, and the whole phases, right, of online adoption. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today, is how do we, again, create kind of energy and buy-in and, dare I say, excitement about offering an 100% online situation if needed. And so you can see kind of the various phases. Arguably, we're in phase 3 right now. And again, there's a lot of people that we're on it. Ooh, where are we? And so we're kind of riding the wave and feeling the kind of surf beneath our feet. But I think one of the things that we know for sure, right, and I think all of us, and we'll certainly hear this from the panelists today, is that we want to ensure that we have a quality online learning experience, that we are creating an exceptional experience for our students so that they can achieve their goals and objectives, and that we all recognize and appreciate that how we did it maybe in the spring with a 2-week kind of turnaround time is not necessarily the ideal. One, we should celebrate that we made those changes as quickly as we did, but in the full, in kind of, the full desired state, we want to make sure that we are really driving to that quality experience for faculty and for students. And with that, to give you kind of a point of reference, we really have kind of our group, the Fab Four, has used kind of these 3 different research studies to help us kind of, well, this one is a collection of a variety of studies, but these are kind of 3 resources that we'll be referencing throughout our conversation. Certainly when we share out the presentation, you will have access to this, the Chloe 5 report again, and then some additional things. And so we'll talk about those and reference those as we go. And hopefully these can be kind of good starting points for some of the conversations or reference points for you all in the future. So with that being said, I am going to stop sharing my screen and let's just have a chat, shall we? All right, I like it. So one of the things that I referenced, right, was the Chloe 5 report. And so it's a really interesting study. They surveyed a little over 300 chief online operators and officers about kind of the state of COVID and the world around them and what the impacts are. And specifically, they asked they set some context, right, that the typical institution back in the spring, in a week or 2, converted over 500 courses to remote instruction. And as that number kind of rose, where we ended up was a high point of converting up to 2,000 courses at some research institutions. When you think about the magnitude and the way in which that happened, in many cases it was a week to 2, maybe 4, but everybody in higher ed really busted their hump, right, to get that done. And as we think about kind of that transition, one of the things that the Chloe 5 report asked of those chief online officers was around the preparedness and what were the levels of kind of preparedness. And 75% came back and said the one thing that was their number one driver and kind of the biggest issue for them was lack of preparedness for their faculty, especially for those faculty that had been traditionally teaching face-to-face online on the residential campuses.
Yeah.
That's a huge number, that's a huge transition, and it has totally kind of changed the way in which we think about higher education as a whole. Fair?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So when you all think about this, and Trish, let's start with you. When you think about kind of the role that you've played at USF, and USF is very much a traditional institution, you certainly have some online programs for sure, but kind of your bread and butter, right, is that traditional undergraduate residential student. And when you think about kind of the transformation that has occurred.
Yeah. Thinking about what our students did, we talk about students being connected and that they know how to use technology in ways that we don't, and we discovered that is not accurate. But we also discovered that it's not just the students that don't know the technology.
Right.
The digital divide reaches everybody.
Yeah.
We sent out information to make sure everybody had a mobile device. And even though everybody responded back, yes, they did, 25 of our faculty did not have laptop computer or a way to work from home.
Wow.
So that was a real surprise for us. We we had no idea that was the case. We have a site, we are in northeast Indiana. We have a site in northwest Indiana, and it's a very urban area, and we, again, mistakenly believed that all those students would have internet access, and they did not. So much so that we had to outfit the outside of the building so that students could drive to the parking lot to access.
Right.
Again, not something that you would have thought would have been a necessity in 2020.
Right.
And then we had faculty, we have one in particular, and I'll probably talk about her a little bit more later, but in her 70s, this was her last semester. She had never done anything online. She had 2 weeks to convert to an online course. And she did so, and she did a great job, but it was a painful process.
Oh my goodness. No,
so those are the things we didn't think about.
Right, right. And I think that's, I think that the beauty is this: you had the ability to adapt, and you created kind of some opportunities to, again, you outfit your building, you make sure that you've got the technology and the tools, right, so that your faculty can in fact teach online, right?
Right, and they kind of learn from the student perspective, right? Because they were learning, and that's something that many of them, I don't need to go to training, I got this. And then we made the jump, and they realized, oh, maybe I do need to go to some training.
Which, to a certain extent, just by the nature of the pain, there is a level of buy-in that's created because they're like, whoa, I've got to kind of step into this to get on board, right?
Right, lean in and take the silver lining that we can find.
Yeah. So Mary, for you, given that, again, that Chloe 5 report said that 75% reported back lack of preparedness for their campus-based faculty, what have you done at Brenau to help kind of close that gap? And what do you still plan to do, right? I mean, I'm assuming that you're not all done yet. I mean, if you are, congratulations, and you deserve a wand and a crown. But what have you done thus far, and what do you still need to do to really feel like your faculty are truly prepared for this?
Well, I feel like we were very fortunate at Brenau. Probably at the time that things had happened in the past, we didn't feel like we were fortunate, but we had went through events that taught us the importance of training our faculty in online. Not very often in the Northeast Georgia mountains does your community get hit by a hurricane and have to shut a campus for, an extended period of time. But we embraced those learning experiences. And so we had already, fortunately, had some plans in place and a requirement in place that all of our faculty be trained, whether or not they're ever going to teach online. I mean, you don't typically expect your theater instructors to just jump right online and teach. But so we had already had some plans in place, and those folks had begrudgingly went through the trainings. But I can guarantee you that on March the 13th, when the note came down from our president that we would have a week to move classes online, that those faculty members were very happy that they had the amount of training that they had had. But we also realized that just like our students, our faculty learn in different ways. Right. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a variety of resources for those folks to be able to do that just-in-time learning. Because on a Saturday night at 11:30 at night, when an instructor is trying to get their class ready before it's going to go live on Monday, I'm not necessarily going to be available for a phone chat on how to do something, or for a best practice conversation. And so we wanted to make sure that we had those resources. And so we have lots and lots. We have developed a huge library of videos and things like that for our instructors so that they can very quickly access videos, or we also have in print handouts. And so we also developed several webinars that we had covering some of the, some various options, like if you're going to do web conferencing, if you have nothing in your learning management system. We use Canvas at Brenau. So ours was, quick and dirty in Canvas. How do we do it super fast? Right. And then we were fortunate that we do have partners that have offered a lot of services to our faculty and webinars and different trainings. And so that's actually what we're going to continue based on feedback. So we've talked to our faculty over the summer, what worked well in the spring, what do you need, what do you feel that you need more support for? Because we're looking at a very unprecedented fall semester, I think. And so based on the feedback from them, we're going to develop additional trainings and videos and handouts and different resources for them so that they can learn at their own pace.
Yep. And I think that's a really important, thing. One, recognizing, to your point, not all learners learn the same way. And so you've got to be mindful of that. We certainly talk about that, again, from an instructional design and development standpoint. But I also think it's really important for us to remember that with our faculty. And again, some of this there's a level of empathy to Trish's point earlier. If I'm a faculty member and I'm trying to get this up online, and not that I don't want to chat with you at midnight on a Saturday night, but there is a level of empathy that is probably very likely to be felt, and again, creates that level of kind of buy-in, right? Cherron, for you, you talk to colleges and universities all over the country at traditional undergrad, residential, online, graduate, so on and so forth. When you think about the conversations that you're having, because you've been involved in a lot of faculty conversations over the last 3 to 6 months in particular around this, what are you seeing as kind of the impact in terms of how faculty are now kind of changing the way they think about online and changing the way in which they think about kind of their engagement with students?
Yeah, it's been a fascinating evolution in the conversations, because I think it was hair on fire initially in March, and then it was hope against hope, right? That this would it would go away and we would all be back in our classrooms in the fall. And I think as time has progressed, as I watch faculty conversations on social media, as I have those conversations myself, 2 big themes I really are starting to see emerge. And that are questions about how can we be exceptionally creative in engaging students with content, with each other, and with us as faculty, right? What are some of the ways that we might crack that nut a little bit? Because I think so many went dependent on some kind of conference tool like a Zoom, and we're really trying to keep a synchronous pace. So it felt very familiar to what was on campus. And I think the truth of students' home living circumstances, time differences, all of those things have proven that we need to find some other ways. So how do we explore that? But I think even more importantly, I'm seeing a level of empathy from these conversations with faculty that is just exceptionally heartening, because they want tools, they want to do these things, and they want to do them in a way that is little or no cost to their students. Because I think if nothing else, this circumstance has proven to us that there is a significant socio-demographic and economic divide in those who attend higher education. And we probably make assumptions of the means that folks have to support their education at a higher level than what the reality of these last few months have given us. And so really wanting to think about what can we do with open educational resources? What are some of these tools that are free, or how do we absorb them into what we're doing as an institution to create a dynamic living and teaching environment for our students? And those are really 2 kind of loud voices that I hear in all of these conversations, which for me is heartening, because at the end of the day, we all want to be student-centric. And that's why we pick this field. No matter what kind of aspect of work we're doing, there's a commitment to that student success. And so I'm thrilled to see that kind of focus.
Yeah, I agree. Trish, you guys have done some interesting things in the way in which you've engaged students in some of this. Do you share a little bit with this group about kind of how you've brought students into this process as you've gone through kind of the transition and what that looks like?
Sure. Well, we did the traditional surveys that everybody did and got the traditional lack of response. But we did get some good response. But even before, we had it's morphing right now for the fall, but we have an adult and graduate learning committee. And we determined very early that we needed to have student representation on that committee. Because our experience is very different than the student experience.
Right.
And if we really want to improve their experience, we need to know what that is. And as hard as we tried, we did not get a lot of direct response, but we set up some things with our students through our platform, and it's been remarkable. The buy-in from the students, they won't talk to us, but they'll talk to the student rep, which has been great. And then also our students are very active in our shared governance. Where we have a separate group that meets just the leadership of the 3 areas, and they have not been shy to tell us what they need, which has been really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think, and to your point, I mean, I think that making sure that there is a level of comfort and availability, right, of somebody who is like me, and that voice can be represented, is huge, right? And to your point, it has informed a lot of your decisions moving forward, and you use it as kind of a litmus test, right? To like, does it make sense? Does it not? Go ask. And they've developed those relationships. And again, to build on Cherron's concept of empathy, right? There's just a level of that I think is incredibly valuable. Let's talk a little bit. I think, Miranda, you had shared that the California Student Act Commission found that over 80% of the students have either changed some aspect of their plans for fall 2020 or are still uncertain of their plans, right? Mm-hmm. And of that, 34% really, it was related to finances, right? 34% said that they think that they need to work more, given kind of everything that's happening around us. 21% think they need to attend a less expensive institution, right? Which has direct implications for all of us. And then the other variable in that was also around location, right? Concern around the modality and the delivery of it, and so on and so forth. So Miranda, given kind of your experience, the partners that you've worked with, and your friends in the industry, from an operational standpoint, what strategies would you recommend that institutions put into place to ensure that they have a pulse on who's really going to show up for the fall?
Yeah, I mean, it has been incredibly volatile from an operations perspective. I think one of the bullet points in that article is that students are really still making up their minds as to right now. So I think I read that in a 3-week time frame, students' indecisiveness around fall went up 11%. So they are still making up their minds, even though in some cases they might be about 2 weeks to 4 weeks out from the start of the term. And so right now, our focus is 100% narrowed in on engaging students with a human. So in our case, it's enrollment coaches that are working with them through the enrollment process, or the success coaches, our academic advisors that are paired up with continuing students or students re-entering for the fall term. And so our new students are working through those last minute requirements and details on their registration. The enrollment coaches are touching base with them pretty much daily to help them get through the process. But the big piece of this is that day-to-day, human-to-human connection. So it's not just about getting that task complete, but it is really about connecting that student with a human to reassure them that as they progress through this process, that this is something that they can do. And even though they might be having moments of hesitation, that this is really the right step. And so the enrollment coaches are working with them daily to get through the process. And then once they are registered, they are still having weekly contact, voice to voice, with students to make sure that they have all the resources necessary to feel prepared. We can be inclined to sometimes send out all of the resources to students at one time.
Right.
That's just not the way students digest and absorb the information that's available to them. So we take the opportunity to go over a different resource as they lead up to the start of classes to make sure that they're familiarized with it. In some cases, they're actually walking them through the resources to make sure they understand how to use them and are really acquainted with it. And for continuing students, that looks a little bit differently. Usually they've had some acclimation to the resources already, but we're still making phone calls, still digging in and checking into hesitations and concerns, and then reassuring students before those concerns snowball. In many cases, when students make the decision to not attend for a term or drop, they have been thinking about this for a couple weeks. So our goal is to talk with students and even dig for any possible hesitations and concerns. Students have a right to really process that with their coach before it becomes a big thing and they've already made that decision. And then, of course, all of our marketing, all of our engagement, all of our text campaigns are pointing the student back to a human, because it's really that connection that we are reliant on to make sure that students don't change their mind and don't melt, right?
Let me ask this, and Cherron, I'd be curious on your perspective around that. So there are many institutions that don't have enough enrollment coaches, or don't have enough academic advisors or success coaches, right?
Yeah.
So now is when, so Miranda, to your point, we need human, right? We need human to human conversation.
Yeah.
Cherron, the question for you is, how might you engage your faculty in this process? And how, do you have ideas or thoughts or, things that you've done in the past to bring faculty into this process to ensure that you're reducing your risk, right? That you're improving your persistence, or at least maintaining and reducing your melt variable, right?
Yeah. I cannot support Miranda's point more wholeheartedly about the need for that human to human contact. If we look back 30 years ago to Vincent Tinto's research around retention, it's about that primary connection within the campus community. Doesn't matter the level, doesn't matter the role, but if there is a sense of an emotional connection, that student is more likely to persist. And the more connections, the more the student feels that web of support. And that's not any different for an online environment at all. I think probably the thing that's different is that your faculty become the primary kind of human relationship that connects with the students, because that's what they see. They may never or have extended periods of time in our current circumstance where they're not back on campus, they're not with a coach, they're not with a student affairs leader or somebody in Greek life. But I think from a traditional campus perspective, you want to bring all of those people into the conversation. So if I'm leading the charge today and I'm on a campus where, I'm not running any of my fall sports in person because either the state or a division has made that call, my coaches are going to be on the phone. And I think the best thing that we can do is equip people on our campus with contact information, with some structures, because these are not things that are typical in their day-to-day operations. So you create an environment that then supports them to reach out and support the student. But I would have every nook and cranny on my campus with a set of students based on prior relationships in particular that would be doing that outreach. And so students could then get multiple points. Maybe it's from the faculty advisor, a faculty department chair, the person who is the advisor to a club they might be a part of, the residence hall staff, whatever that might be. But it becomes definitely a clarity of message and a message of care and concern. And that's really where that affinity back to your campus and to your community is going to pay off in spades. And those will be the students as they're trying to measure what they do and what they don't do. However much trepidation they might feel about online, their association to everything that your institution represents can override that. And we should remember that. We shouldn't just think, oh, there's no way people are going to stick around through this with us. There are ways to keep them engaged and to keep them continuing with you. You just have to be thoughtful about that outreach.
Yeah. So Trish, you and I talked about this last week, right? When in preparation for this, right? Both of us are moms of college students, right? And I also sit with I've got a college student and I have a rising senior. And so, all of their friends are going through this conversation. Am I going back? I'm not. If it's going to be online, I'm not going. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a gap year, blah, 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 right? And then, and I listen to my friends and hear their stories. And so from your perspective, Trish, right? as a mom, as an administrator, as faculty, how might colleges and universities help a parent who is probably funding some of this feel comfortable and confident? And how do we as an institution make sure that we're showing and demonstrating the value, right? To parents and to their students? So talk us through that a little bit. I mean, what would you recommend?
Sure. Well, for me, this really hit home. I'm on a parents page on Facebook, like a lot of us probably are. And I was seeing a lot of, this is a terrible decision. And I started to realize no matter what that decision is, it's a terrible decision.
Right.
So I tried to kind of lurk and not reveal who I was, but I had enough, really. And I said, okay, so I'm a college administrator. And if we decide we're meeting in person, then half of you are angry. If I say we're moving to online, half of you are angry because we're moving online. What do you want? And you can use this with just about every issue. And I had a parent respond to me and she said, thank you so much for saying that. She said, I'll never rant here again about it. And I said, but it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Right.
And then we determined we need to over communicate, which is hard for us in higher ed because we all know FERPA, and FERPA says you can't share anything. Well, we have to remember it says you can't share personal information. So what we've gone to is we address everything to students, and then the next day we send that exact communication to any parental information that we have. So we know not only do the students have our information, but the parents have the same thing to help reduce well, my student said, or my student's friend said that they got this.
Right.
And that's been really huge for us. And just the transparency and having one contact person on campus. So they're not calling around because, especially for first generation parents, I'm a first generation college student. My mom would have called the president's office.
Right.
Because she wouldn't have known anything else.
Right.
So the more that we can communicate, I think the more that we can help parents understand. And, the one thing that I did try to remind people is if we didn't move online, we would have stopped.
Yeah.
And if we stopped, then everybody lost a semester.
Yeah.
Right.
People lost a week, not a semester. So I think if you just really talk to them and not talk at them, I'm good at administrator speak, but that doesn't help in this situation. So that would be what I would say is just make sure you're sending the same and clear communication and talk and listen. Don't listen to respond.
Yep.
So.
No, that's great. That's great. I think there was another study, it was done by College Pulse, and they shared that a majority, 55% of students, say that a shift to online instruction would make it much more difficult to feel that they're part of a campus community. I mean, I think that's a big part of the college experience, right? And so when we think about kind of how do we facilitate and foster campus community, even if it's in a hybrid model or blended model, right? Mary, tell us a little bit about ways that you have kind of used or thought through ways that you can create that sense of community for students inside the classroom. So let's start on the inside of the classroom. How do you create that sense of community?
Yeah, because I think that it's, I know everybody has probably watched a lot of the news about, students' satisfaction with their springtime virtual experience. And we've all saw a lot of schools getting sued because students are saying, I didn't get what I deserved. I didn't get that same experience. And I think it's really opened a lot of our eyes to the online experience of students. I mean, at Brenau, we've been doing online for going on 20 years now. And that experience has changed over those years as technology has allowed us to do lots of new and different things. And so there's tons of ways that we can engage our students and that we have seen some folks do really great at. And my biggest thing, and I think actually it's funny, one of the surveys when I was reading it said this, and I was shocked that it isn't happening in some classes, is the importance of real life, integrating real life into a college classroom. So for example, I teach a strategic thinking class. And the very first day of class, this past spring, before COVID blew up, which made it even more, ironic, I guess, in the end, the students were saying day 2 of class, they're like, what does this matter? I am a theater management major. What does strategic thinking matter in my life? This is a required course. What does it matter? And we went through that. But in our first synchronous Zoom session that we had on March the 18th, I guess it was, I said, hey, guess what, guys? Strategic thinking, you're fixing to see a lot of it. And by the end of the class, that's what because we would start every class and we would ruminate on the things that we have, the things that we have seen and the innovation that we've seen around us. And so one day a class started and a student came in and she was all excited and my little heart just fluttered. And she goes, have you seen these things that they're using to protect their ears with the face masks? She goes, they're 3D printing them. They're innovating. And I said, yes, they're using their strategic thinking skills. And so it's not just even us saying, here is my real life example, but we're getting the students to bring in real life examples. And whether you're synchronous or asynchronous, so one of my soapbox issues is always has been and probably will be for the rest of my life is the discussion question. And so I try to encourage our faculty to bring those real life experience conversations into areas like a discussion question.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Because, it's all great if you can talk about theory. And I love theory and it's important because it's what we base everything on. But if you can't apply that theory to real life, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you've learned what the book says if you can't then translate it into how you're going to use it. And so we've got a lot of instructors that have done a really great job of having students talk about how, you can apply business theories or English theories, different concepts into real life examples. And for our theater students specifically, that was one of the huge conversations that we had in March. How are we going to translate theater and the arts into a technological world? And I'm like, guys, go look at Hamilton. Brandon, this was the summer. I wish I could have, just like got a hold of everybody again. But we've seen tremendous innovations and ways that we're integrating students. And, I'm just tickled to bits about it. And also, the other thing I would tell folks is don't ever think something is too elementary, because I've never seen a group of academics get more excited and more giggly and competitive than when they were in a room doing a Kahoot together. So it's something that is, a little on the elementary side, but that is engagement. If you get people yelling at each other across the room or in a live session or, in a discussion question, because they got the answer 10 seconds before you did, that's engagement, and that's bringing the students into it, and they're not going to forget that content.
Right. And I think there's a level of that gamification, right? We talk about that in education, and how can you bring some of that into the course? How can you bring that into some of the interactions? And I think it does. It creates a sense of community and connection that's an important variable, right? So Miranda, for you, right? Yeah, absolutely. For you, Miranda, you spend a lot of time talking to students outside the classroom, right? You think about all the best coaches and the conversations that are happening there. Whether, again, it's 100% online or even hybrid, right? What are some things that folks should be thinking about in terms of ways to create community outside of the classroom?
Yeah, and I think if you think back to the spring experience, for many students across the country, what they received was just canceled events and activities, and really the fun part and the exciting part of being a college student. And so really have an opportunity in fall to at least attempt to take some of the in-person events and activities that you had planned for the academic year and attempt to recreate these in a virtual setting. And this may not work for everything, but I think that it at least displays to students how committed you are to their engagement as opposed to canceling those events. And so in some cases, some of the cool things that I've seen happen are coffee chats over Zoom and networking events, and really an opportunity to connect everyone, administrators, faculty, students, alumni, in conversations. And I think that that's one way that some universities have been creative. But I think there's a special space to understand that community is not just about fun or activities. It is really, truly about providing support and face-to-face and care to students in a way that they need. And so I think we have an opportunity to really create an optimal virtual experience for all departments. So thinking through the registrar's office, financial aid, accounting, advising, we've all found, I think many of us have found a way to be effective in a very remote environment. Take those learnings and apply them to what we offer for students. So this might be for departments using Schedule One or some kind of scheduling program where students have the option to talk with somebody in your department directly over Zoom or Google Meets and see them face to face, because in the prior environment, they used to just be able to walk into the environment, right? And being able to use that and have a face to the name and to the person that's helping them adds a really personalized touch. And I think that this is a really critical time to even think about getting alumni involved or current successful students. So if you haven't started a mentorship program, this might be an opportunity to really start getting students connected with successful people. Many of our students are struggling, or their parents are struggling with unemployment. And so creating a space where alumni who are employed and have those connections can share that with people and help them get back on track. And so maybe even coordinating with the business community and collaborating on info sessions where your recruiters could go out and talk to the people that are employed, but also that those employers could connect with your students and talk about the job opportunities that they have available, and what requirements they have for those positions. So community is really about finding ways to support your students and doing that in a really personalized and personalized way that helps students build relationships.
And I think to your point there, I think the other part of that too is that our faculty have tremendous relationships with business.
Absolutely.
And how can we, take advantage of kind of those connections and be able to highlight our faculty and showcase our faculty, while also giving them an opportunity to make the connection between business and industry and students. And I love the idea of even maybe parents, right? Our community can be bigger than just the students that we serve, which is awesome. There was I think it was SurveyMonkey found that 58% of students that they polled feel unprepared to continue learning in a virtual environment for an unknown period of time, right? 58%, that's a big number, right? And so when we think about that, I think Cherron, you and I talked about kind of the role of structure. And what role does structure in the learning environment play? And how can that kind of impact buy-in, right? How can that impact buy-in for both students and for faculty?
Yeah. And this is, as I've had these conversations, this is one of the things that I've seen a lot. Should I have deadlines? Should I have, due dates, hard, fast kinds of things related to that? And I would say now more than ever, structure is imperative.
Right.
As a number of years back, I was in the classroom and teaching a course and had the benefit as the dean not to have to worry about what my faculty review was going to return. And so I wanted to run an experiment. And these were primarily adult students. It was a blended course. And I essentially opened up this 8-week course and said, y'all are adults. So here's the plan for the class. Do what you need to do. There are no wrong answers. This was very much about a professional and personal development course. But I'm going to know if you did it in the last 48 hours before the term ended. Good luck with that. And so I kept up with my lectures and we did the in-class activities and released things through the week. I thought to a person, those students' heads were going to explode, because the fact that it was so wide open for them meant that in terms of prioritizing and juggling and really assessing where they needed to be at the right time in the term, that whole loosey-goosey thing didn't work at all. And
Right.
they were adamant about that. And I would say, and that was not even during a time where we're struggling as humans to get up in the morning and remember what day of the week it is, or what month it is, or any of those things, right? So really, I think creating structure, creating something that is consistent in terms of practice, in terms of how you use the LMS, or what the deadlines are going to be, anything that we can provide a really strong foundation so students are not worried about those things and are focused on learning are going to be the things that bring relief to students, but also help them be incredibly successful. At the same time, though, that level of empathy has to be at play. You have to be present enough as a faculty member in your classroom to know who's struggling, to know who's present, who's not, where they might be falling down. And then you allow those conversations with students to say, hey, I'm getting the sense something might be going on. How can we help you get back on track? So you're not giving up the structure, and you're letting empathy and understanding really drive that relationship. And I think those are going to be the times that students can breathe, can focus on learning, and can be most successful. And again, continue to have faith in you as an institution, your faculty, your programs, that you're invested in their success, even in the craziness that no one knows what's coming next.
Right. So I'm mindful of time. I feel like we should have scheduled this for like 3 hours. I really do. So I'm a little disappointed with my Fab Four time allotment. We should have had more time. Well, let's do this. So Mary, when you think back at the last, 3, 4, 5, 900 months, whatever this period of time is, you don't even know what day of the week it is. But when you think back over the last several months, what are the things that you think we should be celebrating? And what are the things that you're celebrating in terms of Brenau and kind of the transformation, if you will?
So I think as a global community, one of the big things that we should really celebrate is the community of learning that we have created among all these institutions. I mean, it's the whole reason that we're all here today. And it's something that I've seen on a scale that's just unheard of. I know that when we started developing some of our resources for faculty, some folks at our university are like, we had somebody ask if we can share this with their listserv or whatever. And when I went in and looked at it, there were probably 200 institutions sharing information among one another about how to reach students, how to teach effectively online, and conversations that we never would have had had this not happened. And so that's sort of on a global scale, but on a local scale, I know from my university we are celebrating just a level of innovation that I am, as the person who encourages engagement and things like that with our faculty. I am just thrilled with the innovation that our faculty have come up with, and our students for, like I said before, for doing theater in an online environment. We've got students who are creating amazing videos and all this amazing stuff that they're now sharing with our Brenau community. We've got folks in nursing who, you're like, oh, that's a science. How is science going to be innovative? But one thing that our nursing department, one of their big challenges this spring was we've got a lot of standardized testing that they have to have. And usually it's done in a very, a lab environment that's very proctored. And we found ways, and they worked really hard to find ways to do that in a virtual environment and to proctor that in a virtual environment so that those students could still get that testing. And they provided video ways that the students could do their checkoffs for different, lab clinical type things.
Right.
So the level of innovation that we've seen, I mean, I know that some schools have, maybe not had great experiences and based on the survey results, but I have just been thrilled with the way that folks have really stepped up to the plate.
Awesome. Trish, for you, I know we talked last week about one of your faculty members and this whole concept of lifelong learning, right? And the past several months have really demonstrated that. And all of you have kind of talked about that in a couple ways and forms. Trish, tell me about kind of what you've experienced and again, how you think COVID and this kind of transition and or experience has really, really emphasized lifelong learning.
Well, I think, as I mentioned, Sister Felicity, who was 3 months from retirement, in her 70s, never been online, moved online. It was painful. There were tears, but she did it, and we were able to celebrate that. But I also, we had a number of faculty, and Cherron has had the pleasure of meeting some of them, who said, I am never going to teach online. I'm never going to do this. And not only are they doing it, but they're doing it really well. Yeah. Which has been a blessing in disguise for us. Right. And I think it's just, everybody's really getting on board and just saying, okay, this isn't what I expected. This wasn't what I signed up for, but my students didn't sign up for this either. And if I really care about them, how do I make it better for them? And it's not all hearts and flowers and unicorns and rainbows. I mean, we still have your holdouts, but really more and more of them step up every single day. Our teaching and learning services, they are so busy, they don't know what to do. So much so that even in these times, our institution has moved up hiring another instructional designer a full year. Right. Which is huge for us. Right. So it's just, we've all got to be together and we've all got to learn, and it goes from the student worker all the way up through the president. And we've had a presidential change in the midst of all of this as well. So we're just all sharing the oars and taking our turn, and we need to celebrate that. Yeah, it really is. I mean, again, I think that it has been amazing to watch, right? Mary, to your point, the level of innovation, the creative problem solving, the new ways of doing things, the change in kind of attitude and behavior for a lot of us, right? That didn't want to do that. We're going to keep that over here. That can't be a good quality educational experience. To now, to your point, Trish, people saying, this is amazing. Like, now that I did this, I could do this. And I thought about this and it makes me wonder about this. And it just becomes kind of a great opportunity to spark new and different and engaging, while also holding on to some of those things that are really, the good, strong traditions and the approaches that we know work, but translating them into an online environment, which is awesome. Yeah. So let me look here. I don't know that we have any. Oh, here, we've got a couple of questions. Using online mode, skill learning. I'm not sure that I'm understanding the question.
So if I can jump in, Cara, I think Prudy is asking about how you might take very skills structured based learning and bring it to the online environment. And that's probably more than we can do in 3 minutes. So I'd like to just encourage you, Prudy, to join us next week when I and the Director of Instructional Technology and Instructional Design will both be joining me. And we're going to talk about tools for engagement. And I'll make sure that this is at the top of the list so we can talk a little bit about ways to use your assessment strategy to really get to that skills level learning.
Yeah, awesome. And let me do this. I think, again, we are out of time. We've got 3 minutes to go, and I know Sparky wants to work his magic yet. But I want to make sure that we kind of hopefully hit the mark on kind of our objectives today, and hopefully we're able to kind of, again, help bring to light some research, talk through some of the ways in which we can really kind of engage students and faculty, that hopefully had some opportunities to think through strategies for teaching, learning, and services. And then finally, that the Fab Four here helped kind of explore ways that we can really improve that student engagement as well. So with that, Sparky, I will turn it over to you and certainly offer up and remind everybody that this webinar panel has been recorded, and we'll share that out within the next day or so that you have access to that. And certainly I'm going to speak on behalf of the Fab Four. I believe all of them have agreed that if you have questions, they're happy to help answer. And to Mary's point earlier, certainly, they're willing to kind of share best practices and resources and things along those lines as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll get you connected to the right person to help make kind of things go more smoothly for you and or your institution. So with that, Thank you all for joining me. This has been absolutely fun and delightful. It's great to be around four fantastic and incredibly intelligent women. So thanks for joining me. And Sparky, I will pass it back to you, my friend.
All right. So just really quick, I'd echo the same sentiment. Great insight, great perspective from Trish, Mary, Cherron, and Miranda today, and Kari from you too for being the ringmaster of all this. So thank you. So just really quick, we've talked a lot about how to get that buy-in. Okay, once you get in that buy-in and you understand the whys, then it's the hows. How do you get this done? And so at Helix Education, we have taken this transition to quality online education, and we have framed it within these 4 pillars. Today was heavy on institutional online readiness. Cherron, as she mentioned, our webinar next week will dive more into that online teaching and learning experience. And we also have webinars and resources around the online student experience and engagement and student and parent expectation management. And again, the goal of all of this is to allow us at Helix Education to help your institution transition from this emergency remote learning, hair on fire, 1-week transition to quality sustained online education. And so we have compiled a collection of guides, rubrics, templates, other resources that are available online that we're making available to any and everybody who wants to accelerate that online transition and create a quality education experience for online students. And so again, the different categories, things that we have. We've got assessment rubrics. We've got how-to guides. We've got professional development and training, including these webinars, the ones that we've done. We've got them on that site. Foundational templates, benchmarking, KPI documents, lots of things that are available for you. And again, it relates all back to these 4 pillars. And so obviously, if you're interested in all of them, we got stuff on all of them. If you're feeling solid about certain of these pillars, but not others, you can tailor your experience and the resources that you access and download to your specific needs. And we're going to continue this journey on this road to fall 2020 and beyond. And so again, Cherron teased her webinar next week, and then we've got others in the pipeline as we go through the end of August. And so where can you find all of these resources, all of our recorded webinars, all these sorts of things? You can find it on our website, which we've just posted in the chat, helixeducation.com/new-future. That is the hub for all of this information, all of these rubrics, how-to guides, training, templates, KPIs, etc. And like Kari said, we are more than happy to address your specific situation and answer your particular questions. Send us an email, newfutureinfo@helixeducation.com. We've also put that email address in the chat. And so please reach out. Let us know how we can help in your specific transition to quality sustained online educational experience. And so lastly from me, thanks once again to Trish and Mary and Cherron and Miranda and Kari for the fantastic discussion that we had today. We hope that it was enjoyable for all of you out there. Thank you for the privilege of your time. Please stay safe. Have a great rest of your day and week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care, everybody.